back in session. Parties and counsel are present. Counsel had an opportunity to meet with one of the defense experts. I believe that was Dr. Rudin, is that right?
Actually, the defense refused when Dr. Rudin requested that the prosecutor be present for a group conversation.
Okay. So what do we do?
So I guess we're going to do a hearing.
Okay. So you can call your witness.
Sure, we'll call Dr. Leonid Rudin. If you can take whatever you need to be prepared.
Understand?
Yes. Sure, go on. Oh, then leave it here. We have to connect it with it.
Do you solemnly state the evidence you'll give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
State your full name, spell it for the record.
Leonid, Leonid.
I'm sorry, can you say that again
Yes.
louder?
It's a Russian name. It's Leonid, Leonid. Middle initial is I. And last name is Rudin. R like in Richard, U, D like in Dave, I, N like in Nicholas.
Okay.
Again, make sure you speak right into that microphone nice and loud for everyone.
Yes, sir.
What is your current occupation?
I am a Chief Executive Officer of Cognitech Inc.
Cognitech Inc. C-O-G-N-I-T-E-C-H.
Yes, sir.
And what is Cognitech?
Cognitech is a small business, high technology business, founded in 1988, so just over 30 years old, located in Pasadena, California.
I'm sorry, where, California?
Pasadena, California. And it specializes in forensic video image processing and photogrammetry, specifically forensic photogrammetry.
And I take it you've been involved in that profession for at least those 30 years.
Correct.
Have you been involved in those fields for longer than that?
Let's see. My first trial was, I think, in 1991. So it's a little bit less.
What educational background do you have in the fields that you just described?
So going backwards, I received a PhD degree in computer science, specializing in imaging science from California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California. And prior to that, I received a master's degree in applied mathematics.
From where?
And that's, it's called University of Odessa in Ukraine. And I forgot, I also received a computer science degree from Caltech prior to PhD degree. Master science degree.
During your career, have you been associated with any professional associations in the fields of forensic photography and grammetry?
Yeah. So I'm currently associated in membership in American Academy of Forensic Science. So I have a long association with this organization. It's actually the official, it's called associate member, but I've been a founding member of their multimedia group from the beginning, and they promote based on people writing, you need to put an application, and I just don't have time to do that. So I haven't been promoted, but I'm a founding member there. I've been also a member of, historically, not currently, in the last year or so. Due to health reasons, I was not as active in, let's see, American Society of Photogrammetry Remote Sensing, the International Association for Identification, both the international branch and California branch, IEEE, it's American Institute of Electrical Engineering. Let's see, it's all in my resume. There's like a long list of associations.
That's fine. Can you briefly describe what your company will do with forensic imagery in a case such as this? What kind of services do you render?
Correct. So, so we currently do not actually offer services. We are primarily covering the world, the entire globe, and as such, it's more effective for me to be 100% as an algorithm designer and company administrator, etc., than just testifying in courts. So, but my company produces working operational software that is being used by forensic labs throughout the world in this specific, and law enforcement and public safety people and so on. In this specific case, the question is what we call 3D analysis or photogrammetry, forensic photogrammetry. So it's one of two major branches that I specialize as a scientist and my company specializes as a company. So one branch deals with images and improving images, which broadly called image enhancement. So it's something, let's say, we did at Reginald Denny case 27 years ago. And second branch is this 3D analysis, which also is commonly known now as computer vision. So 3D photogrammetry kind of morphed into computer vision. And that is the relevant science to this investigation.
Can you describe what 3D gammetry or computer vision is?
Yes. So normally it takes about a 2-year course to describe that, but I'll try to be brief. It's a science that basically analyzes three-dimensional world captured in photographs or flat videos.
And when it does that, what is the purpose of that capture?
The purpose of analysis, you mean?
I'm sorry, purpose of analysis. My
To
apologies.
measure the world.
Okay. Were you provided, this software that your company uses, is it proprietary?
It's proprietary in the sense that a lot of engines that we build have United States patents associated with it, multitude of patents.
You and your company developed those, that software?
Well, absolutely. I mean, they don't grant patents from taking technology from somebody else.
Okay. And what is the role of that software in the analysis of an image?
Could you repeat the question?
What is the role
Okay.
of the software in analyzing a suspect image or an image?
Yes. So software is a mathematical engine that ingests data, analyzes data, and produces three-dimensional measurements to the best accuracy, estimated accuracy.
And when you say three-dimensional, you're talking about things along the X, Y, and Z axis in relative space, correct?
A good example would be somebody's height. If I took a picture right now and the question is how tall are you, then we would like to estimate your height and as accurate as possible. That would be measuring
in preparation for your testimony, by which photogrammetry works in analyzing
typically give to law enforcement and public safety and forensic experts the course that I teach periodically on forensic photogrammetry, and I basically took a bunch of slides from it and appropriately, adapted it to this presentation.
Okay. With the court's permission, I'd like to display that to allow Dr. Rudin to walk us through his analysis and how the process works.
This is the first I've heard of this.
Well, I offered it to him at lunch, but he refused. I said, please come watch the PowerPoint and he'll explain it to you.
Well,
And you walked out.
That's the purpose of the 402. So,
Do we get a copy of this PowerPoint?
Be more than happy to. I offered it to him at lunch.
No, Your Honor. Let's make the record clear. We asked to speak to Dr. Rudin, and Mr. Im said, I'm staying. And we said, no, we want to speak to him without you here. So he says, Mr. Rudin, do you want me to leave while you talk to them? And
That
he
is
said,
incorrect, sir.
well, it doesn't matter what, I don't care what that conversation was. It has nothing to do with him showing the, his slide presentation. Now, purpose of the 402 is to give you the information that you indicated you didn't have before.
Correct.
So, your objection's overruled, you can proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Rudin, as a basic introduction to photogrammetry, can you please describe for us what is on the first slide and what its usefulness is to us?
Should I be turning to the court?
You can look at the monitor to your right if you'd like.
So that's the slide number one, just to
Is this marked as an exhibit?
And not yet, but with the court's permission to use in front of the jury, I was then going to do that.
Well, let's mark them now, so this will be next in order. What number is this?
It's going to be 806.
Okay.
Please proceed, Mr. Rudin. Dr. Rudin.
So slide number one is sort of humorous slide. It's a cartoon by, I'm not sure who, but hopefully I can use that for court presentation. And it's pretty much depicts the importance of photogrammetry. So obviously you see what's happening. A man is stranded on a small island and is looking for somebody for the rescue, and he sees a ship, and ship comes and it turns out to be a toy ship. So what he's actually trying to say is that what we observe and the true size could be deceptive to a human eye.
Okay. And how is, in this sense, the size of an object maybe that's in the distance deceptive to what its size is when it's closer?
Right. So because the nature of the human eye, we do not see one-to-one projection. What we see is so-called projective projection. So the simple example would be a pinhole projection. So each ray traces through the opening in the pupil, and by doing so you can show that objects of the same size at a different distance will appear different size. So if I have a pen in front of me, it will appear a certain size, but as I move it further, it will appear as a smaller size and so on. So that's what is, it's basically a law of projection.
I'm sorry, basically what projection?
A law of projection, yes.
And how long has the science of 3D reprojection been around?
Well, let's see. So officially we think that Leonardo da Vinci was the first scientist that discovered this relationship. So we need to subtract somewhere middle of his life to, so we're talking about over 500 years. So since his death, I think we're going to be celebrating or whatever, the other way around, his death in 1919, so in 2019 actually, century. So about 500 years.
So the principles you're talking about are nothing new.
I mean, 500 years is significant in science.
Okay. So when it comes to forensic photogrammetry, can you please explain that process using the slide in front of you?
So, so the basic principle of photogrammetry is so-called projective mapping, below projective mappings. And it basically, a discovery, again, Leonardo discovered it first. He never wrote a formula because he didn't want anybody to know how to do it, I guess. But about, I would say, 100 years back, just before the World War I, German scientists described it in exact terms. Given a point location in some coordinate system XYZ, and I hope I don't need to describe what Cartesian coordinate system is, one can actually determine its location on a photographic plate, which is called UV. So there is a relationship given XYZ, the projective mapping will establish the UV. Now, why is it important? Because going backwards, it gives us a hope to look at the points in a photographic plate. At that time, there were photographic plates, there were no digital chips, and then establish where and where exactly in space with relation to the camera is the object and how big is the object. So again, the projective mapping is the fundamental law of projective geometry. Reversing the projective mapping is what allows us to measure size of objects from photographs.
And can you please explain the importance of this?
It's saying the same thing in two different ways, that there are two coordinate systems. One coordinate system is literally horizontal and vertical position. I don't have a mouth, so I cannot use the mouth. But on the right, you have basically a CCD array or a photograph, and in each position can be thought U and V are horizontal and vertical position of a pixel. Pixel being the smallest element of the image, right? The smallest thing that gives us brightness, pixel element. And on the left, we have what we call world coordinate system, something like, for example, in this courtroom, I could put a coordinate system in the left corner, X being depth, Y being width, or the other way around, and Z, of course, is typically height. So it just said there are these two universes, and the relationship between these two universes is called photogrammetry.
And what is single frame forensic photogrammetry?
Well, so when Germans used it first, I call them Germans, German scientists used it first during the World War I, they actually were taking pictures of allied fortifications from those biplanes, and they were trying to estimate the lengths of fortifications, and from that they computed how many troops were there. And the way they did it is they would take two pictures spaced by a number of, by a distance, it's called a base. And then they would analyze so-called disparity or triangulation. So they would do triangulation based on images, and then they would actually determine the lengths of fortifications, and then they would figure out how many allies were there and how much mustard gas they need to use, basically. That's called the stereo approach to photogrammetry. So in 1995, prior to that, I was approached by a number of police and private investigators dealing with cases, actually one particular one that maybe I can mention, and they don't have this situation when you have two cameras looking at the same object from the baseline. So there was no way to do, so surveillance camera, you don't put two surveillance cameras looking at the same thing, because surveillance cameras are so expensive, so you spread them so they don't actually intersect. So how do you do photogrammetry from a single image? That was the question. So it was a heresy to even ask this question, so I had no choice. I had to answer this question, and I figured out to limited extent how to use it, and I published the paper with my co. I think, as far as I know, is the first scientific paper on single frame photogrammetry or single frame metrology, as it became known to be. Yes.
And was that used in the image that's presented of the suspect from America's Most Wanted year 2000?
Yes, one of them.
Okay. And how was it used in that instance?
I don't remember this case well, to tell you the truth, but I remember another case if you ask me.
Okay. So, can you explain to us real-time projective superimposition with a static camera? What does all that mean?
That's very interesting. So if you look today at how people measure the height of suspects from imagery captured by surveillance cameras, there are really two schools. And the school number one is my school, which is, or I belong to that school. I certainly was in the beginning of that school. Of course, Leonardo was before me. So, and that school says, okay, we're going to take those pictures and we will do certain mathematical operations, and from that we will extract, let's say, height of the individual, okay? So, and mathematics is so well known and so worked through that the primarily difference between the methods is how fast it is and some degree of accuracy, okay? So, so that's the school I've been with, and as a matter of fact, just let me add to that, that between early 2000, I think late 20th century and year 2008, I was a principal investigator in several national agencies, particularly this very secretive agency called DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And I also worked with National Geospatial, NGA, National Geospatial Agency. I was a not private investigator, the principal investigator on a fairly significant project where we flew various, what they call now, flying platforms and satellites, and it was sub-inch accuracy imagery, so that could not be done by any other means but mathematics. So we were trying to locate objects from space and calculate them extremely accurately because, for obvious reasons.
Okay. So using the image that you have in your slide here of a reference image and the height of a man, what is real-time projective superimposition?
Right, so that's the second school. The second school says we don't need any math, okay? It reminds me of some songs. We don't need any math. What we can do is following. Instead of, so given this image, we can do the following. So you can project next slide. So given this image, we can do the following operation. The camera has not moved. One can use a computer to superimpose the live camera view with the prior image and determine the location of the feet of the suspect, place a ruler in that space, being vertical ruler, and then superimpose that image back, and then you can actually measure the height. So it's basically an operational method of superimposition, okay? That's one application of this. There's another wonderful application by forensic anthropologists where the remains are recovered from mass graves, and they're trying to determine, let's say, they find a skull or this kind of remains, and if they have images, they actually superimpose this image at the scale, rotate, etc., which is, by the way, very relevant to what we did here. So it's called forensic superimposition. This is where I first learned about this method. But that is done by also mechanical means, but later it was done by computer means, when the skull and the photographic image were superimposed just so to see if the features match, anatomical features. So this is how they do identification of the deceased.
in this case, were you provided certain pieces of, I'm going to say evidence for lack of a better term? In the
this
case that you're here about today.
Right, so in this case, I provided methods that are actually a hybrid between live superimposition and classical photogrammetry.
Okay. Were you provided certain pieces of evidence in this case to look
Was
at?
I provided?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the skills I provided. Yes, I was provided various evidence videos.
Okay. Were you provided a copy of a surveillance camera from the front porch of a residence?
Yes, correct, yes, I did, I was provided.
Were you provided what is called a Faro scan of a white Chevy truck, utility truck?
Yes,
Were you provided a Faro scan of a white Isuzu Trooper?
yes,
Were you provided a Faro scan of the neighborhood in Fallbrook?
yeah, if you forgive me, I'm not sure it was completely white, but maybe a little creamy, I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, which?
Trooper.
Okay.
I think it was not completely white, but I don't remember exact
Okay.
color. Color didn't matter in my work, so,
Okay. But you were given one of a Trooper regardless of the color?
yes,
Okay. And you were given a Faro scan of the neighborhood where the surveillance camera was located and the street
yes,
in question, correct?
yes.
Okay. With all of that material, can you please slowly and simply walk us through the process you used to compare those pieces of evidence?
Before you do that, could you explain what a Faro scan is?
Yes, it's a commercially available high-resolution laser scanner.
Okay, so it scans a particular field or scene or object and gives you a precise image with measurements?
That's what certainly the claim of the company is, and that's what an opinion of the community is. So,
Okay, I got it.
So if you can just briefly walk us through, or kind of simply walk us through the process you did to analyze those pieces of evidence and by use of superimposition to come to any conclusions you did.
correct. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay, so pretty much, I do it pretty quickly. I'm sure that there is a better way to draw a hexagon, but it's the prettiest hexagon I could master in 10 minutes. And so basically, in mathematics, we call it commutative diagram. A commutative diagram is a geometric representation of processes or algorithms related in such a way that data passes from one node to the other in such a way that with the minimal error and maximal correspondence. Okay? So in this case, the beginning would be the lower left node called 3D model. So we start with 3D model. 3D model being the Faro laser scanner generated model of a truck, okay, or a vehicle, whichever vehicle that is, okay. For that matter, it could be any other object, but in this case, it was a vehicle. And the vehicle then is matched, and it's actually a scientific word. We call it matching registration. Those are the words. In other words, you find correspondences or determine correspondences or indicate correspondences with a night scene from surveillance camera in the some house. Okay, I understand the house the crime scene. That house exists at the crime scene. So so the question was, can this model of this truck produce this evidence image? That's the question, okay? And when we say can it be done by projective means? So in other words, given this model, is there a position of a car? Which, okay,
I'm gonna give you a bigger one so we can all see it.
I guess
It's not a truck, but
it's something you carry in your all times. And so this is a model. This is actually a model. So our model was a mathematical model, a bunch of points in the computer, but it's just as good. For example, I could use a 3D printer and print my model, right?
when you say points in the computer, is that the imagery from the Pharaoh of,
Yes.
okay, of the
So,
vehicle?
Laser scan consists of two parts, the geometrical model and the image. The geometrical model being a bunch of, set of points, and with each point there's an associated XYZ coordinate, okay? Which is derived from laser scanner, which basically shoots rays and measures the time of flight, return, and by that it measures distance, and from that it can infer the XYZ positions of the points. That's the mathematics of the laser. So coming back to this, so again, there's no difference between really model being physical model and mathematical model, because those devices are so accurate that those correspond to each other. And according to Farah, I believe they claim 2 millimeter accuracy. 2 millimeter accuracy on the actual determination of coordinates, which is incredible actually. So, so we start with this model, and then we look at the evidence image. In this case, evidence image is very, very bad quality image, I would say. Typically what we call, in my field, bad image is an image in which you cannot read license plate. In this case, you cannot see the license plate. In fact, you can't see anything. You see basically like a bunch of points, bright points, or blobs, and some bright objects, and some level of details that you may assume is something related to the model. Okay, so so then the question is, assuming that so you make a hypothesis. Okay, you say, okay, so let me. We're looking at the model, and we know where the lights are, right, in the model, the front lights. And so you see two blobs in the image. And you say, let's assume that these blobs are these front lights. So, and you see which one is left and which one is right for this. And then you say, okay, so this geometry of these lights are, let's say, some would respond to this corner of this blob, and this corner of this light correspond to this blob, and so on. So you just click those points. So that is the step number one, and then you look at other things. So if there is a grill and you can see some detail on the grill, or if there is a bumper and you see some detail on the bumper, and you can guess where that thing is on the model versus the image, you click that too. Okay? So at that point, you just use your knowledge of the world to do so. It's done actually by human beings. It's not done by the computer. So you make this hypothesis, and you may ask a question which you haven't asked, but you may say why. It is because we want to dismiss. Methods are specifically good to dismiss a relationship between images and models. Because if we can find at least one feature on the model, or one feature in the image that doesn't correspond to what we think is supposed to correspond between them, then we just reject the model. Okay? I would say this. So you look at the percentage. So if you click 10 points, and like 8 out of 10 match, and 2 didn't match at all, and the matching being disparity, between them, okay? I will explain to that because there is a process involved, and after you match them by hand, computer goes through its signs, and then it says, I accept these points, but I cannot accept those points because they don't match mathematical model, because it's not physical. There's no mathematics and physics involved that could keep those in line and yet have those matched as well. So it's kind of like a voting procedure by the algorithm, which is based on physics of optics. And then if we find at least a couple of points that cannot be matched, we just reject it. And that's the end of the story. At that point, we say that model cannot correspond to that image, okay? So in this case, there were some bright points, okay, and there were some features. But if I would like to simplify it, imagine if you're looking at the cityscape as you're driving on Freeway 11, whatever, and you see the downtown Los Angeles. But you've never seen downtown Los Angeles, and you may ask a question, what city is this? Is this San Francisco, Chicago, is that New York City? Of course, people recognize New York City, and the question is how? Well, because you see a bunch of lights. That's all you see at night, right? So one of the methods, and I'm assuming that it would work very well, how brain does it, I'm not sure. I'm not a neurosurgeon, but the computer would do the following thing. It would take the model of the, let's say, downtown Los Angeles at night, and you would light up those things, so there will be a bunch of boxes with lights. And then what you would do, you would take the image that you see from the freeway, which one is it? 110, right? From 110. So you look to rotate this building and turn this building and put it in such a way that the bright windows just match. And if you can do that, and there is no windows that didn't match, then okay, you say, okay, so maybe there is a correspondence. Maybe they could, in other words, you found a projective mapping. That's a step number one. The next question, of course, you would ask, okay, so I just found this building or this vehicle that can correspond, but what if it is upside down? What if the building is standing on its roof, okay, with respect to that thing? Then you know, oh, no, because you can identify where the roof is, right? Because there's a sky on the back, and so you can see that. So the first step is not sufficient, but it is necessary, as we say in mathematics. If you violate that step, you stop, okay? And that's what we always try to do. But in this case, so reprojected, what we call reprojected fusion in here. Reprojected fusion actually yielded a fairly good results, which are also measured internally by the algorithm. It's called reprojection error, and we keep reprojection error to less than 2 pixels per point, okay? In this case, it was well within that. So that was the step number one. The step number two is courtesy of Ferroscan. We actually had more information. So not only we had a scan of the 3D model of the vehicle, okay, we also had a scan of the crime scene. And so after we superimposed a vehicle with the, we also superimposed the evidence image with reprojected fusion, with reprojected model, and then we superimposed it with the day image. And the reason we could do that, because the camera didn't move. So we knew the correspondence exactly. So when we position our model of the vehicle into the scene, now we could see where it is with respect to the curb, to the house, to the street, etc. Okay, so that's the next step. The next step was to say this, the following thing. Well, but the Ferro also has an image. It produced an image when it scanned it. It's from a different position, okay, relatively speaking. It's from a different position. However, by law of photogrammetry, if I can establish 5 points, 6 points actually, 5.5 points correspondence when mathematicians are kind of speak like this, but there's no such a thing as 5.5 points. So we have to go to 6 points, actually 11 equations, 2 points per equation, so that's 5.5, but 6 points. If I can establish 6 points between the crime scene image and the daylight fusion, then the law of projection kicks in. Then it tells me that for each XYZ position in the laser scan, I can actually find corresponding UV position, which is a pixel in the daylight image. But if you remember, in the daylight image, I can see the truck. And if I see the tires of the truck on the ground, now I can ask a question. So these 2 points, which 2 points correspond to it in the laser scan image? I find those points by the law of projection again, which I use over and over and over again, okay, same engine. And at that point, Faro laser scan will give me the distance. So we computed the whole circle and we came to metrology. So we started with a 3D model, which was a hypothesis, an evidence image. And we completed the whole commutative cycle, and now we can actually compute. Assuming that everything matched and the error alone is matching, we come to a metrology point, and now we can determine a distance. And so as I said, there are 2 elements to this method, which is computing projective mappings over and over and over again. That comes from photogrammetry. It's a basic of photogrammetry. The first-year students of photogrammetry know how to program that stuff, okay? But then we also injected 3D models into this, and that combines it with the reprojection idea. So it's kind of a hybrid of 2. So we completed the circle, and we made some measurements, and we compared those measurements, therefore, to once more time to the 3D model. And we say, okay, the measurements we derive from these images, how does it relate to the 3D model of the truck? And so, for example, if the base, wheelbase of the truck is particular number x, and we derive another number y, and x minus y is large, then we say, okay, we came to another point of decision, whether it's acceptable error or not. But if x minus y is smaller than a certain threshold, we say, once more, we didn't reach a consensus, and we cannot reject. So it's all about rejection. It's about concluding rejection. However, if you can measure many, many, many points, not just wheelbase, what if I measure height, and then I measure the width of the vehicle, and then I measure if I could see things like the doors of the vehicle, and whatever points on the metal design and so on, then you can get, and we've done cases like this, so you get tens and tens of measurements, then you're talking about identification at that point. But in this particular case, it was not so much about identification as about, say, can we reject it? And then you derive an answer yes or no, and that's all you can say at this point.
And in this case, what was your answer?
The answer was that we could not reject it, okay? But there was some guarded error that we derived. It was not ideal error. I mean, the ideal error would be, let's say, if the model is, let's say, gives you 10 feet, okay? If the model gives you 10 feet, what is the accepted error, okay? So it's sort of, in a way, subjective, but I would say that in my practice, I would be very suspicious if the error is like 10% or something like this. But then you also have to look at other devices you use. If, for example, your device produces 10% error, scanning device, then you can attribute it to that. If whatever other complication may arise during this procedure. So in this case, we derived a certain error that I would say if it grew somewhat more, I would be skeptical about this hypothesis, but it was sort of right on the border. So I could not reject. I believe it was within the accepted error at the border of that.
The mathematical principles that are used in each of these steps, are they generally accepted in the scientific community for photogrammetry and 3D projection?
It's basically a table of multiplications in photogrammetry.
So that would be generally accepted amongst mathematicians and people that practice photogrammetry?
Certainly at Caltech, yes.
Okay. I'm going to switch now briefly to, I need to get out of your thing for a second. As part of your process, did you create videos and still images that correspond to your findings?
Yes, so all along this process, you create images and other data such as points and in the end measurements. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Madam Clerk, I give you a disc. What was the exhibit number on that?
800.
Okay. So on exhibit 800 is this file, which is the 3DV Fusion 10 point of the white truck. And I'm showing that now to you on the screen. Do you recognize that?
yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the green dots are on what appears to be a white truck in the upper right?
So the green points are the ones that operator clicked on the model.
Okay. Okay. Let's back up a second. The underlying image from the camera, is that the suspect image or the surveillance camera image that you were aware of and that you were provided?
So you're referring to a vehicle.
No,
I don't have a mouth.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about just this general image of the front porch with this pillar, driveway, grass.
So this image is one of the frames of the video provided to us
Okay, from the surveillance camera.
from the surveillance cameras, but then processed and superimposed with the 3D model appropriate projection.
And what is the 3D model projected into the surveillance video?
That's what we call white truck,
Okay, is that this item up here in the upper?
that model, yes.
Okay, and on that projected model, where did that projected 3D model come from?
From laser scan by Ferro.
Okay, the green dots that are placed on the 3D model, please describe those and how they got there.
So if we were to look at this community diagram, this would be a stage in that process. And as I mentioned, during that process, we take 3D model, that's the step number one, and we determine just visually what are the relevant features. And we try to use everything that we can conceivably see in one that we think is in the other, okay? Because we don't want to mismatch, because maybe those other ones will give us a rejection. On the other hand, we cannot really match things that are unrealistic, right? So we try to do that. And you would say, okay, that there is a subjective opinion involved. But actually, the more points you click, the worse your life becomes, because the equations are very intolerant to exceeding data. So as I mentioned, that there are theoretically only 6 points that can be matched perfectly. In this case, actually only 3. I can, if you ask me a question, I will explain to you why. So adding, let's say, having 10 points instead of 3 points would create inconsistent system of equations that would be just spitted out by the computer, and error would be unacceptable. I don't know if I'm making it clear, but if you take a sheet of paper, okay, and you put 4 points on a sheet of paper, and you take that same sheet of paper and you put another 4 points, and you take 2 pictures, there's always one projective mapping between them, at least one projective mapping between them, that as one point goes to the other, it will actually find correspondence. But if I arbitrarily put another 5th point, and it happens to be not in proportion, so it's not like, let's say, intersection of 2 diagonals of this quadrilateral or something like this. There is no projective in this universe that would match them. So it tells you that not any 5 points are in general correspondence position. Now imagine I added the 6th point, and the 7th point, and the 8th point, just because I think they correspond. So now I make my life very, very difficult, because I'm getting these inconsistent systems of equations. So going back to that picture, I apologize, maybe I walked a little bit too far and I don't see my picture. It went
Oh,
black.
your picture in the PowerPoint?
No, you're showing me, my screen went black.
Oh, I'm sorry, your screen went black?
Yeah. Hello?
Let's see,
Okay, if you don't mind.
if you can look up there, that'd work.
Okay, so if I had a laser pointer, would you
I have one of those too.
Okay. So somewhere in my presentation, in my data, the process data, I'm going to make sure I'm not shooting in my eye. Oh, yeah, very good. Okay. So somewhere in the data that I presented, there is a flyby, a 3D flyby, and that was the truck, and it shows all the points we clicked. And
Hold on,
so-
I will pull that up. Would it help if I pulled that up for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Right there, is it going down?
Oh, there it is.
Okay. So this is another one a little bit smoother, so we have, but anyway, that's good. So this outlines the front, right? So what we did, we clicked 1, 2, 3, 4, then we clicked what we thought was the, in the model at least, this is Insignia Chevrolet, I believe. And then we clicked 2 points over here, and we did not click other points further out because that part of the truck was partially obscured, so we couldn't then conjecture.
It was obscured in the surveillance video.
Yeah, it was obscured in the surveillance video. It was the edge of the image. And then there were other reflections that would conceivably be in correspondence from the high curvature edge of the bumper. And you can see sort of lines, the streaks of lines that are very constant, in other words, what we call consistent over a period of frames. So we don't click anything that simply appears in one frame and completely disappears in the other, because that could be what we call image noise, random disturbance that might appear as something else. But in temporal domain, in time domain, those things are not stable. So we only look for stable features that can be discerned in at least a couple of frames. So we did discern all of those. And then there was another one way back, okay, which we assumed that that's what it was. We don't know that that's what it was. Again, let me just make it very clear. When we click points, we don't know that we're clicking points that are truly in correspondence. We're
With the
simply,
surveillance video.
yeah, at this point, those are the points clicked in the model. But if you could show me the other screen somewhere there that shows them in correspondence, which ones did we click in the other place?
That's the other file. Did you close this one?
Yeah, unfortunately, we give you this MPEGs for compactness, and it's very difficult to play MPEGs. No. It would be actual black image, dark image with points. You would just see the points.
This one?
No, keep on going.
I think it's in the other folder.
Are you looking for just a still image?
Yeah, still image with points, yes.
Is that the,
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's just stop. Don't play this guy. I don't know if he's active or not. So you see. Okay, let's just take an example. Okay, and again, this is compression. MPEG compression actually makes because we wanted to give you as compact data as possible. We deal with single frame accuracy in our players, which are not commercially available. So we see those numbers very, very clearly when we work with them. But let's say this one says 10, right? And the 10 corresponds to what's in the truck is the passenger side. I have to remember where I'm in UK now or in the United States. I'm in the United States, so this is a passenger side. So this is 10. And what should it correspond? So my brain says it should be this point, right? Okay. I mean, could I conceivably put it anywhere else? Yes. But there's no question they would be rejected, okay? And if it's rejected, it doesn't mean anything, right? So that's not the point in just spending time. So again, 10 corresponds to 10. Everybody would agree. But then how accurately do I locate them? Well, I have to try. And so I located them as accurately as I can, and then if later I want to locate it slightly differently to see if that's acceptable sort of reasonable logical correspondence, I would move it again. Okay? And what I'm trying to achieve is this, that a small motion of points should not cause a large disturbance of the projective mapping, because that's what we call ill-posed problem, when small change in data causes a large change in the solution. So we try to get away from that, then we would eliminate those points, because those points, for whatever mathematical reason, are not good points. Okay? So, and I'll actually give you an example. It turns out that at some point there were certain points that were like giving us trouble, and then we realized that there were holes in the model. The model, when it's being scanned by the laser, has actually produced holes. You can see them, right? So it's like there is a rusting on the body. So there are different reasons for different places, but over here there was a glass metal, and glass metal is notorious because when you shoot an optical ray, even if it's a laser, it will actually refract it and it will not come back, right? It's not like me shooting at a solid surface and coming back and then I know what the distance is. It's the physics of a laser. But if I shoot at the glass, it will be just refracting and going somewhere else, so I never get a return, so I don't know where that point is. So laser at this point puts a hole there. So, but if I get too close, I end up putting a point that actually goes all the way back to the tail, okay? And sometimes visually it's not clear. So so we were able to locate points as stable as possible, so that's that. And so we repeated it for 10 features here. So there are what we call 10-point match. And if one would look at more detail, and from that you cannot discern it, you would have to take a video, take the frame number I think it was frame number 76. You would have to zoom this frame number 76 and look carefully what these points are. And so, for example, what is point like 10 and 5 and 4, they're obvious, right? They're corners of the blobs which we assume are lights. But the 6 and 3, what are those? Okay, so it turns out that there are some details on the vehicle that we thought could produce those, such as a high curvature edge of the bumper and some sort of object that also can be seen or appears to be a stable object, which is some kind of a box on the boxy structure over here. Okay, I think it's a charger. I'm not sure what it is.
Okay.
Okay, some kind of object. So it's not seen on normal vehicles. I never seen one like this. So we put it again. If you zoom this image, there is kind of a boxy structure there, which kind of a rectangle that is stable over a period of frames. So it doesn't appear to be noise. So we conjecture and we put that point there. So after we did that, okay, let's go back to that image.
To the video?
Yeah, that video that you were showing. So yeah, so before you get to that point, right? So when we did that, so first of all, we computed this reprojection mapping because we have 10 points. Remember, you only need 5, actually 3 in our case, and theoretically you need 5, but 6. But in this case, 3 is enough because there's something known about calibration of the camera and so on. And with its own points. So those dark image, it comes from the truck itself, okay? So you say, what are we doing? So of course, I mean, those are the points of the truck. What we're doing is this. So when the vehicle moves into a position which corresponds to the same frame, let's just move it forward. We're assuming it's a vehicle, it's some object is moving in space. So let's keep on going forward, one next. I don't know if you can control, keep on going. Next one. Yeah, so we're in position, okay, right here. So what we're looking at is this. We say, okay, so those points were clicked on the model, okay, on the model.
But now they actually match the brightness pattern to the T, okay? We can actually compute this error, it's less than 2 pixels in each case. So, it didn't have to happen. It didn't have to happen that those lights just ended up in position 5, whatever, 6, I can't read it because of the compression. And most significantly, go one frame back.
One frame back?
Yes, please. Can you? Well, yeah, I know it's compression image. You can't go back easily. Compression doesn't allow you this, but in our players you can do it. So if you go back,
Trying.
yeah, I know. I don't think you can.
I don't think I can, so let me,
No, it's a nature of streaming video. It's not what we call. Okay. Keep on one, but you can only go forward, not backwards. Okay. Like in real life. Okay, so. You're ready. Okay. Keep on going. One more, and watch this point. Watch this point. Go forward and watch this point.
you're referring to the point what appears to be on the back of the bed?
Right. That green point. I don't know what the number is. 9 or something. Okay. Did you see it lighted up? It lighted up.
Okay. What is
That means that the what we call the corresponding point, what we clicked as corresponding point on the dark image, evidence image, somehow took itself and put it exactly into reprojected point of the click point on the model. It didn't have to happen. Just because you click points, like I said, even on the piece of paper, they don't have to come together and like each other. Okay? In the general case, that white point could actually end up like over here while those are in place, okay? As a matter of fact, we did this experiment with the trooper, okay? We clicked all the corresponding points in the trooper in the same fashion, and in the end, we had a mismatch over here.
The trooper was rejected?
Yeah, the trooper, well, it was rejected in 2 different ways. One way it was rejected because the white point was mismatching when we only used the front points, okay? If we used all of the points, you could get this match, but the trooper would end up in totally unphysical position, which would basically indicate that the trooper is taking off for a liftoff and is going to go to the space, okay? Which we know the vehicles, unless Tesla knows how to do it, nobody can do it yet. So that was unphysical, completely unphysical. So as I said, basically, just because we click 2 sets of points and we go through this process, doesn't mean they have to match. Just because I want it, I can't force mathematics to do 2 by 2 equal 5, even if I want to. So as I said, there's a mathematical formula that relates the XYZ positions to UV positions in the image, okay? XYZ from the model to UV. Maybe I'm too long-winded, but this is very, very crucial point, okay? That mapping is restricted. It can't just do whatever it wants, okay? It has a restriction. So those points need to be in mathematical correspondence, which basically means that in real 3D space, that 3D model with those click points has to have at least one position such that if I compute that map, those XYZs will go exactly into those UVs. And if algorithm cannot find that position, it will just reject it. It will give me an empty space in my screen. Okay, so we don't even produce, there's nothing to produce. It doesn't have a solution. Okay, so again, so that's what I'm trying to say. So this is very crucial. So we got a step 1. So no rejection at this point. So okay, so no rejection. Can we say that therefore A equal B? No, we can't say. We are, A being a vehicle seen in the surveillance scene, and B being a vehicle, a model. So I'm not establishing A equal B at this point. I'm trying to prove that A is not equal B. Just because I could not prove that doesn't mean that A is equal B. I don't know if it's understood. Okay.
No, I understood it.
Okay.
Do you have something further to explain as to this image?
Not to this image, no.
Okay. Actually, I have no further questions.
Okay.
Okay, so if I understand your conclusions, the truck that was the model, you cannot eliminate that model as being what was in the video, correct?
I cannot eliminate that model, correct? Yes, Your Honor.
You can't, but you also cannot make an identification and say it definitely is the truck.
You're correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so some people would say it would be consistent with. Is that a term you would use?
I would say, to say consistent, I would need a few more things that actually process is trying to do, like measuring things.
Okay, so,
At this point, we would not call it consistent or inconsistent.
okay, so the bottom line is you cannot eliminate it.
I cannot eliminate it, no.
Okay, good enough. Did you have cross at this point?
I did have some cross, I got a simple question. The photograph or the still that you had with the marker points, it looked like marker
I'm sorry,
points.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
The photograph or the video that we had stopped up here, it had marker points 1, 10, 4, and 5, I think, around the headlight, correct?
I don't remember exact numbers. I have to look at the image.
Well, I'm going to show you just a picture that had the motion of a still. That look familiar to you?
It's a little blurry here, but I don't see numbers.
Council, just put it back up, that'd be helpful.
There are no numbers here.
Correct, but that's the image overlay of the video, correct?
Yeah, sure it looks like it.
And it looks like the lights that you're assigning would match up to the headlights, correct?
Right, so the points that I clicked on the model end up in the same position, that relative position to the headlights as they were clicked in the image, yes.
Why didn't you click to include the parking lights that are way down, the bottom of the parking lights and the parking lights that end out here? Why did you not click those?
Correct, because I was not sure that if you look very carefully on that, I was not sure where they were, because they're, if you have to zoom at it, okay? You have to zoom at it, and I don't see them in enough detail to click it precisely, okay? But if you insist, we can always do it. It's the more the merrier. So,
What if I was to tell you that those running lights are always shown with the headlights, and you have to include them to make your
not if
2-point
I
match?
don't see them clearly. I mean, I cannot. As I said, I clicked everything that I thought reasonably should be included, but there is no problem in including more, and you will simply just get. So you want me just to click arbitrary points that have nothing in common?
No, sir. The running lights that are under the headlights, correct?
They're not very. In fact, I believe, click number 4.
4 is the bottom corner of the headlight, correct?
I have to look in more detail. Zoom it up. Is probably on the frame.
Zoom in on the left side.
Right. So let me
Static.
remind you what I said. Something about the.
Hold control and roll
Okay,
it.
wait.
You would have to zoom on an actual model. Thera model is very, very high resolution, and this is the one we are actually clicking. This is just a compression.
It's a GIF.
So let me say one more time. So there are holes. Sir, there are holes that are generated by laser scanner. I cannot click on a hole. So the point 4 is actually right on the border. There's a metal frame. That separates what you call running light. I'm not expert on vehicles, so if that's a running light, it's a running front. So in a sense, it actually indicates both of them. It's right on the border of them.
Between the headlight and the running light.
Right, according to this model. And if I move into the space for the running light,
I'm back in the hole. You actually see those holes.
Right.
So I would love to be able to click those points, but I can't because model doesn't allow me.
Okay, so the running light that's below the headlight, you understand that those are
I don't necessarily understand it. I have never seen this vehicle in real life, so I don't know whether they're supposed to be on. I'm assuming that it's some kind of a light, but is it a dim light? Because it's not very, very well visible here. It's kind of dim. But something below it seems to be reflecting it very strongly. So I don't know how strong in lumens, let's say, that is with respect to the lumens on the above. Let's speak in terms of energy. I don't know. Is it ratio 10 to 1, 2 to 1? I don't know.
let's just say it's just as bright as the headlights.
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
Let's just assume you can see them just as easily as you do the headlights.
But I don't
Objection
see it
calls
on
for
the image.
speculation.
I agree.
I don't see it on the image.
Neither do I.
So that's a question for the expert on the vehicle expert, not an expert in photogrammetry.
If you'd moved points 4 and 5
Yes,
below the running light
but to what?
to right below the running light, to the framing. Here, where's your laser pointer?
Yes.
If you moved 5 instead of from here down to here, and 4 down to here,
I believe I did in another experiment that you may not have. It would still match.
you did do that.
I think we have another experiment that
I would love to see that.
because I'll show you why, actually. We try what we can to try to destroy the hypothesis, right? So whatever reasonable points we see, so we started actually with 4 points, then we went to 6 points, then we went to 7 points, and then we went to 10 points, okay? And we were sure that at some point we will break the hypothesis that they're equal, but we were not able to, okay? If you really would like us to add points that you believe are visible, we can run that experiment for you, but it has to be a reasonable assumption.
Okay.
So you have to see it over a period of frames, right? So it's not noise. It's not just a speck of noise that appears in one frame and not in the other.
Well, let me ask you a few questions that my expert wanted me to ask.
Okay.
Did you review anything in preparation for your testimony today, and did you review anything in preparation for your testimony in trial?
I don't
Objection
understand.
vague.
Did you review any materials, notes, anything else in your workstation, or did you just memorize everything from when you first did your analysis?
Very good. It's my work. It's in my brain.
You remembered everything.
Pretty much, but when I came here, I wanted to make sure that attorneys have the material. So I don't know what you call by review. I'm not sure what your question means.
Did you look at anything like notes or things that you wrote down or processes that you did in preparation for testifying today? To refresh yourself about this case.
Yeah, okay, fine. So I went to the whatever site that we communicated the data and make sure that the data was there, and that's pretty much yeah. So
What data did you look at?
the data that this attorney was flashing on the
So you looked
screen.
at the exhibits?
Right, right.
And that's it?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay.
And then we went over what you received from the DA, so we covered that. Did you receive any information about the case in addition to the information or the data or evidence that you described receiving?
Objection vague as to time.
Overall, he can answer.
So we
had, I believe, how many? 1, 2, 3 communication events in a way, groups of events. Starting the first time that I believe detective or detectives showed up in my office in Pasadena. That was a number of years ago. And that was about primarily, okay, here's the video, can you analyze this video? And at that point, I don't even remember knowing anything about actual details of the case other than images, data images. Okay, second, when we were in the other office in Pasadena, I think it was about 2.5 years. I know that for sure because about a little bit over 2 years, because there was some health event that happened roughly 2 years and very significant. So I know it was before that because I wouldn't be able to meet with them. Again, that was all about, okay, what is your data analysis can do for us in terms of analysis, and can it derive information? And the third time,
Let me ask you about the second time. Who did you tell about what your data analysis can show?
So I believe there was a deputy DA who came to our office in Pasadena. And at that point...
Doctor? Was it this gentleman who's telling me it was me?
Yes, I believe that was the gentleman.
Okay.
And so...
For the record, that's Mr. Dougherty that was being pointed to, not Mr. Irons.
And the third time?
And the third time, I received a call. I'm not sure whether it's, I think from this gentleman, well, I didn't see his face, but now I've seen, I think that's the first time we met today. And Mr. Bridines, and he called me and he said, so what is this, the status of the data processing? Can we add, not add, but can we make a more thorough review at this point and summarize what we have? And then he informed me that there is a trial, and frankly, I did not know anything about this trial, except that somehow it was important for them to show up and a period of number of years and keep on talking about it.
No.
So I didn't know much about it, but then I don't know if you asked me or not, but I know a little bit about the case because finally I just looked on the internet what it is about. but I typically, being 30 years in this, you know, like a surgeon doesn't get involved with life of the patients. I just look at images, data. It's all numbers to me, and so I can't get. It's not of great interest to me to know what's going on other than this. That's what I do.
Okay, and what items did you use in preparation of the exhibits when you prepared those?
Could you repeat the question?
What items did you use to prepare the exhibits that we are seeing here in court today?
Items, computer.
And you use the software on computer, I assume?
Yes, of course.
And does the computer offer any analysis or conclusions that you see on a screen, like readouts or anything like that?
Like what?
Like a readout or anything, like error percentage or anything, other than just figures?
There are a few pieces of data that have been shown today which reflect further computation along this commutative diagram with measurements of the wheelbase that has not been presented here.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. I think our reporter needs a break. So we'll take about a 10-minute recess. I need to recess a little bit after 4 today, so we'll take about a 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.